with Underground Science. Tonight we've got Ken Gerhard with us, and we have got Kurt, who's filling in for Dallas, who's sick tonight. And Dallas, if you're watching, we hope you get better. So, Ken, how are you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Thanks for having me on tonight. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, well, we really appreciate it. Missing in Alaska, that I like that show. I like the premises for it, and there's another reason I'll get to on that later. But I like the way y'all go about it.
Well,
Uh,
thank you. Thank you. We're proud of the work we did, and TV is a little bit of a give and take because obviously they don't let you as the investigator have the final say as far as they're spending millions of dollars to produce a TV show, so they want people to watch it. But they did work with me quite a bit in terms of doing good research and coming up with some cool ideas, and yeah, it was an amazing experience, really.
Now your co-hosts that are on there, did you knew them before, or were you introduced to them on the show, or how'd that come about?
No, I had never met them before. One of the cast members, Tommy, he had been kind of the one they'd been developing the story around. Tommy has a very tragic, a true story. His father actually is a missing person. His father
Ooh.
went out by himself on a fishing trip when Tommy was a young boy and never returned, and they never found any sign of him. So for him personally, it was a very kind of profound journey to try to get to the bottom of some of these missing persons cases. But Tommy is also very colorful and interested in folk. He's a Tlingit, which is the predominant nation kind of in the southeast Alaska. And so he knows a lot about folklore and legends, and there are a ton of them in Alaska. So that was what they wanted to pursue. And then they brought on me and Jax kind of at the last minute and just kind of threw us in together. And but we got along great and had a good chemistry, and ultimately we've become pretty close friends. So it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, the chemistry really comes through. That's what makes a show. It makes a huge difference on if I like a show or not. So with y'all, it's really good. Uh, Now, Jax, was he into cryptozoology before the show, or what was his background?
No, not at all. Jax is he's a private investigator, but previously he has experience in law enforcement, including SWAT team, and he's a very kind of by the numbers kind of guy coming from law enforcement. He obviously wants to see the evidence, wants to see the proof. When he interrogates people, he's looking to see if they have alternate motives and so forth. So he comes from a private investigator standpoint, but he was open-minded, and sometimes that doesn't come off in the show because they want to emphasize the different points of view.
Right.
But he had heard about other accounts about Bigfoot from other people he knew, and he's interested in the Thunderbirds and a lot of these other mysteries. So he was very objective and open-minded. Tommy was, we were all kind of objective. I mean, it was my role on the show to be the weirdo, the quote-unquote weirdo, that takes it to that kind of strange place. But Tommy, he's, again, the mythology and folklore of Alaska, and, there could be connections there. So.
Well, like in the episode with I cannot pronounce that bear, the folklore
Tongassuk.
bear, the huge white bear.
Tongassuk. Mm-hmm.
Okay, Tongassuk. I like that because he told just how he spoke about it was really neat. And then whatever got into the cabin and tore everything apart, which I'm sitting there thinking, look for raccoon prints or something. But there's not any Alaska that I know of.
No, not really. Well, the raccoons they have in Alaska are called bears. And I'm not being coy because bears and raccoons are actually very closely related. They're,
right.
Ursids and prosonids, I believe, are the raccoons. So the bears fill the same ecological niche that the raccoons would. They're just much bigger because Alaska's bigger and food's bigger and all that kind of stuff. But there were a lot of bears in that area we were at, and other critters. There are other animals running, badgers and wolverines, and so who knows?
The wolverine I'd be worried about running into. Those are not nice.
But I got a question. I got a question for you again. When did you get into the idea of cryptozoology? I mean, how old were you, or what occurred in your life to really go, hold on a second, there's some questions I want answered out there. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well, actually, what happened is I responded to an ad on Craigslist. Cryptozoologists wanted, and I really had no experience. No, I'm just kidding. People always ask me this question, so I wanted to take it a different direction.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, that's
okay,
good.
cool. Okay, I did the mundane. I asked the mundane.
No, it's man, it's been a lifelong passion. I always tell people when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I watched a TV show about Bigfoot, and like many boys who were 8 or 9 years old, I thought Bigfoot was the coolest thing I'd ever heard of, So at that time, of course, there was no internet. Went down to the library and read every book, and I've been into it my whole life. But where I had an advantage is that I had the opportunity to travel all over the world with my mother. She was a travel agent and took me all over to the Amazon jungle in Australia, Africa.
Oh, wow.
Oh, that's cool.
So wherever we traveled as a young boy, I would investigate the legends of creatures and monsters. And age 15, we were at Loch Ness in Scotland, of course,
Oh, wow.
home of Nessie. And so that's kind of how my life developed. And then maybe about 15 years ago, I began doing serious field research here in Texas with Bigfoot researchers that were really passionate and very outdoorsmen, expert trackers and stuff. And we began to experience things. And since then, it's just everything's just kind of snowballed. It's been fun.
Is there certain states where there's more sightings of Bigfoot than others? I mean, everybody's got their local, legends. You know what I'm talking about? Like one area might have a certain name for it, while the other area, let's say West Virginia, might have a totally different one. I'm from the Maryland area. Let's say Western Maryland would have something different than West Virginia. I mean, I mean, do you see a lot of that?
Well, no, that's a great question. I think the top 10 I can probably recite. If you're talking about the continental United States, it's Washington State first,
okay.
Then California and Oregon. So the coastal ranges definitely have the most sightings by far, all in the Pacific Northwest. But then after that, you have a lot of sightings in Ohio, Florida, where it's called the skunk ape, and of course Ohio, it's known as the grass man or orange eyes. There's different names up there. And then when you get into the lower top 10, it's places like Pennsylvania, Michigan, Texas, Illinois, and there are a lot of regional names wherever you go. But there are sightings all over. But obviously you don't have a lot in certain states. In the Northeast you have a few, like in upstate New York or some in New England, but you don't have a lot of sightings in like Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, which you would expect, So the point being that the sightings actually correspond very nicely with habitat that you would expect to have that would support Bigfoot.
Okay, I was on a show one time, all right? But we had a guest on the show. I can't remember which one it was. But we were talking about Bigfoot, and somebody brought up the fact that he thought, and this guy, I like this guy, but it was interesting that Bigfoot is actually an alien. Have you heard that before? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, people bring that up a lot lately. It didn't come up in Bigfoot. There were a lot of reports in the 1970s, the weird 70s, in Pennsylvania specifically, of sightings of Bigfoot seen around UFO landing sites, and there's one of Wisconsin of a Bigfoot actually piloting a UFO. That's kind of a weird.
Oh, that one's great.
Yeah, that's a great story. But the sample size, when you look at the thousands of documented Bigfoot sightings on record, the sample size of reports that connect them with UFOs and things like that are very, very small. It's a very small percentage. I think that I attribute a lot of that to the modern kind of the era that we're in right now is kind of a new spiritualist movement where people are very much into the paranormal. UFOs and ancient aliens almost represent a kind of religious belief system,
Right.
So, there's a need for people, and not maybe an unconscious need, it's not a malicious thing, but there's a need for people to want to find kind of that higher truth. And Bigfoot, because it is so elusive and iconic, I guess it kind of reminds people of that, that grand mystery and that higher truth. And so people do want to associate there's kind of a movement in the Bigfoot community right now that's not real popular. It's known as the woo. And people are talking about how Bigfoot are actually the Nephilim from biblical times, and that they are psychic and interdimensional, and it's gotten really weird. So not most Bigfoot researchers aren't embracing that, but there is a segment that's exploring that possibility.
Right. I've talked to some people like that. Now, I myself had to do a college paper, and my teacher was like, "No, you can't." I was like, "I'm gonna do it on Bigfoot," and he's like, "No, you really there's no evidence, there's nothing on that." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever," and I do my paper anyways. And I did it on the fact that I thought there was a couple species, and my opinions changed, but you've got more than one species in North America, and I think there's at least three. I'll never hear the end of it from Kurt. But you've got the skunk ape. You've got, like in Louisiana, and to me, it's the footprints are different, and the descriptions of them are different. So physically, there's a difference, and that's where I got my idea from. It's size and all that.
Well, those are good points, and I guess it really boils down to perspective. And so, a lot of people do feel that there are probably different subspecies and types, and that makes sense when you look at different types of habitat, that subspecies will kind of crop up. Right. And I don't mean to completely disregard the claims of interdimensional Bigfoot and stuff, because really anything is possible. You have to be truly objective when you're in this field and understand that there are spectral, metaphysical, and supernatural things that go on, and certainly some percentage of Bigfoot cases could be connected to the paranormal or something like that. From my perspective, I'm a real old school cryptozoologist, which means I follow the methodology of science, traditional science, as closely as I can, even though I'm dealing with really bizarre topic matter. And from a scientific point of view, you have to look at the most pragmatic, the most logical explanation for Bigfoot. And that is that you have a primate, a giant primate, which is more specifically a hominid, a man-like form, or a great ape, running around in the wilderness of North America. And the reason that it's a pragmatic explanation is because those species actually did exist, we know from the fossil history, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it's not totally impossible that some of them could still be around and go extinct.
Do you think, if you look at if you were to do, let's say, a count of how many are actually out there, because now with what's going on with social media and everything else, so many people could be out in the woods looking for the same thing. Let's say the Mothman. We'll make that up. Say the Mothman. I got this weird interest in the Mothman. But let's say that is, wouldn't you think after a while, if it was true, that Mothman's going to end up on the front of a pickup truck in West Virginia? Nothing against people in West Virginia, my sister-in-law's from there. But you know what I'm talking about, that like these hunters out there are going to catch it. And I don't know, I find that interesting. Like, one of these days we're going to wake up and read a real article and go, no, I can't believe, I don't know. I just think that might be coming soon.
So you think Mothman in West Virginia might actually end up in someone's pot, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's dinner. That's straight dinner right there.
They hit it with the truck, and then they're like, "Whoa, dinner!"
Just peel the feathers real quick. And
no, you know what? You're making some great points, Kurt. And I have, again, I'm a very objective researcher, so I can't say 100% that Bigfoot does exist, because there are strong arguments why we haven't found any physical remains, and why we don't have better photographic evidence, and so forth. But I have to make a quick point, because a lot of people do tend to want to lump in things like Mothman, the Jersey Devil.
That's weird. I just was talking with them right before you said that. I was bringing up the Jersey Devil. Yeah. Yeah,
all of those things are not really technically cryptids or in the field of cryptozoology, because from a scientific perspective, they don't make any sense. You don't have things that look like Mothman and the Jersey Devil in the fossil history. There's nothing even remotely close. It's impossible. So those forms we consider what we call zooform phenomenon, or there's other names, but basically paranormal cryptids. So things that are, we don't know if they're interdimensional, if there's apparitions, if they're, extraterrestrials or what, but they're definitely not flesh and blood animals. But we do study them because, they are interesting and pretty weird.
They make good stories to keep the kids from certain areas also. So what I remember you on CFC website years ago, and I don't remember at the time if you were doing anything on TV, uh, what shows or anything. I had kids running around the house, so I didn't get quite as much into things as I could. But when did you start? You have been on so many channels and so many shows. When did that start in for you?
Well, actually that started back in 2006. I was at the Texas Bigfoot Conference, and I met a TV producer from Canada who was looking to do a documentary or a Bigfoot show. And the show was called Legend Hunters. It was on the Travel Channel, and he, fortunately for me, I mean, I feel very blessed. He chose me out of several Bigfoot researchers that he talked to. He just wanted to follow me around on a Bigfoot investigation. So that was my first appearance, and then shortly thereafter, I appeared on a few episodes of the show Monster Quest, which was on the History Channel.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Right.
And yeah, since then it's been a wild ride. I've been on like 30-something TV shows in the past, 9 years or whatever, and it's been a lot of fun. But Missing in Alaska was the first time I, had an opportunity to do a whole series, a whole season. So we were able to kind of get into a groove.
Now, one thing I had started reading about a few weeks ago, and Paul, I can't remember his last name. He's got some books on it, The Missing 411.
Yeah,
and
David Paulides.
David, okay, I had his name wrong. But all these people going missing in state parks, and the more I was reading it, the more I saw he was linking it with Bigfoot, so to speak, as the disappearances were caused by that. He was a member of one of the Bigfoot sites, and I thought that was really interesting. And with your show Missing in Alaska, it's kind of the same type thing, not exactly, but
yeah. I mean, it's fair to say that like we did an episode on Bigfoot. We called it the Hairy Man. That's kind of the Alaskan name up there, but and unfortunately we didn't get all the information out there that I was hoping. And again, there's producers and people that kind of decide how to edit this stuff together, but there are many famous accounts in Alaska and British Columbia, next door there, of people being abducted by Bigfoot. And the most famous one was, of course, Albert Ostman, who was a Swedish prospector who claimed he was kidnapped by a family of Sasquatches in 1924, very famous case. There was a guy named Nootka, a native man named Muchalat Harry, that claimed he was abducted in British Columbia. There's another native woman named Grandma Charlie who claimed she was abducted. I mean, there's several accounts of people that claim that they were like snatched up and kidnapped. Now, they all escaped unscathed. So, the positive way to look at it is, that maybe they're not being harmed. But, there are also native legends of the Dizanaqua. The Kwakiutl people talk about Dizanaqua, the cannibal queen, and she's basically a wild woman, quote-unquote, hairy Bigfoot being that snatches up children and eats them. So you could take it to the extreme negative and say, well, maybe they're cannibalistic and they eat us occasionally, which I hope that's not the case, but you have cannibalistic giants in different legends around the world.
right.
Or maybe they're very intelligent hominids and they kidnap us for various reasons, a curiosity, or who knows. But I mean, that's the inference. Now, Paulides takes it to another level, and he's done a lot of research, and I respect that. But a lot of people do disappear, but a lot of times they disappear for obvious reasons. They fall off a cliff, or get attacked by an animal, or break their leg and can't find help, or hypothermia. It's very dangerous when you go into a national park.
Right, and then there's people that do want to disappear, and that's kind of the perfect thing.
That's Jax. Jax would always say that.
So, what other, I don't know which of your favorites in the crypto world there are, like which creature, which one you like researching or investigating more. I know we see you mostly associated with Bigfoot, and, I like the Thunderbirds. I've seen you associated with that.
Well, I love them all. I mean, it's hard to choose, really, but I think what I'm most known for is my research into flying cryptids, mainly Thunderbirds. They don't get the publicity and the hype that Bigfoot and some of the others get, but I've interviewed dozens, if not hundreds, of people now that have claimed to see these enormous birds with wingspans 15 to 20 feet across, 3 to 5 times larger than some of the biggest birds that we know of. And that fits in with the Native American legends, many Native American legends that talk about these giant thunderbirds or super eagles. They're on totem poles and things. So that's really fascinating to me. And I also, I do a lot of Bigfoot research as well, but I'm also fascinated in aquatic cryptids. I mentioned the Loch Ness Monster earlier. Of course, you got Lake Champlain Monster, Campy, Ogopogo, many different, for the early stages of cryptozoology, which started in the 1800s and into the early 20th century, sea serpents and lake monsters, were the rage before Bigfoot and Yeti came on the scene. And there are literally thousands of documented reports of very similar-looking monsters, aquatic cryptids that have been seen in different lakes and oceans around the world. And actually, those reports go back centuries. The great sea serpents. I'm fascinated in the aquatic cryptids, and I don't think there are enough people looking into that right now.
Right. Well, technology, even us actually being able to get there in the water.
That's true.
Look at something ocean-wise. We
under the water.
Yeah. So I know technology has changed, and in a lot of ways, it's helped, so to speak. I know that it's with the paranormal as well as cryptozoology. When you're investigating. So what, out of all the new fangled things they've come up with, is something you've really liked more than the others that you think is beneficial?
Well, it's a great question. Again, it hasn't really worked for me yet, but, thermal imaging, of course, which you guys use in the paranormal field, FLIR. I mean, the theory behind it is, the concept is so strong in terms of you're looking for something that's warm-blooded, and obviously you're in the woods, it's dark, it's at night or whatever, but if you can see a heat signature, then you've got a pretty good chance, whatever that is, that's a life form. So that has really been, I think, a kind of a beneficial tool that a lot of cryptozoologists are kind of grabbing. Of course, still very pricey, so not everyone's got one or the best version of it.
Right.
But, that might be our best chance for finding something like Bigfoot. Is in particular, if you had the money, say, to mount these FLIR thermal imaging cameras on helicopters or airships, balloons, whatever, dirigibles, and overfly some of these areas, that might be the best shot.
That would be cool.
That would be great.
Very cool.
Get our own little helicopters and go over the woods in Madrid.
Hey, Ken, I have a question also. Do you keep in contact with people that are that study cryptids all over the world? I mean, is there a whole area? Let's say somebody from Germany, then to let's say to Russia, all over the world. I mean, are they still seeing the same things that we see in the continental United States?
Well, good question. I mean, different cryptids all over, and I have to say that I'm very blessed to have a great network of colleagues all over the world. So I do have good working relationships with most of the cryptozoologists in the world. We all do tend to work together and get along for the most part. Things like the man-beasts like Bigfoot or Sasquatch are pretty much worldwide. You have, of course, the Yeti or abominable snowman in Asia. You have the Almas, the Yeren of China. There's the Yowie in Australia, the Orang Pendek of Sumatra. I could probably list, 200 names of hominid creatures around the world, and the descriptions are all very, very similar. So that's kind of a worldwide thing.
I think the biggest thing is like size. Maybe the size of them is more adaptable, or the coloring of them is more adaptable for the area they're in also.
Sure, and again, that's evolution and natural adaptation. Animal forms, whatever benefits they can derive from the habitat they're in, they might take on those tendencies or characteristics. But the lake monsters and water cryptids pretty much worldwide. But you have some kind of regional things here and there. We have in Africa, you have something known as the Nandi bear. In Europe, you have the Tatzel worm, or in Mongolia, the death worm, the Ogoi Korkoi. There's people don't realize how many cryptids there are. There are literally hundreds of different types of cryptids that have been reported all over the world. there's only so much time to investigate them. And here in North America, the thunderbirds are. I think that's pretty much in North America only. I haven't heard of a lot of thunderbird reports around the world, only in North America.
Right. Now, one thing I want to ask you about, we discussed this with somebody else, the chupacabra.
Mm-hmm.
Which to me, the story has, if you listen to this story, it has changed the further up north it's come, and settling now in Texas, Arizona, and even going a little further north. Your opinion on what that may actually be?
Well, chupacabra is a composite identity, meaning that you have one name that's being to describe a bunch of different things that are going on. And, I get asked this on virtually every interview that I've ever done because people are confused. Yeah. Puerto Rico in 1995, you began to have strange livestock killings. The livestock owners claimed that some vampire-like animal was drinking the blood of their chickens and goats and leaving them bloodless. Around that same time period, people began to see this weird reptilian bipedal creature with giant eyes. That is the original Puerto Rican chupacabra.
Right.
Fast forward to 2004, a man that I've met many times here in Texas named Devin McAnally had animals dying in the same fashion. Something appeared to be drinking the blood of his chickens in mass quantities, killing them in giant groupings. And he, around that same time, shot this weird animal on his property, and he couldn't identify it. It had long teeth, and it was hairless, and kind of had a bluish-gray color, and a four-legged quadruped, and people began to call it a chupacabra because there's a lot of there's a Latino people here and Mexican American people here in Texas, and they had a chupacabra from Mexico in their mythology, and so the name just kind of spread across Texas. Now the CFZ and researchers like myself now refer to the animals in the U.S. here as the blue dogs, Texas blue dogs, because they are canids. You can tell that when you examine them, which I have, at least 6 of them. Physically, you can look at their right away. Look at their teeth and their different characteristics. And say this is a canid, it's a coyote, or a wild dog. But they do look really weird. They're hairless and they have long teeth and blue skin, and so the predominant theory is that they're suffering from a disease called mange, sarcoptic mange. Some of us think that there may also be genetic things going on, like mutations caused by hybridization or pollution and different things like that. So, but they're veritable monsters, but there's no evidence that they really do drink blood. That hasn't been proven. Right,
and I know in Mexico they do have a probably 30 to 40 pound hairless dog. And I've got a history in animal welfare. I used to run a humane society doing them. And we used to get a lot of dogs and cats with mange, other sort of issues that were a lot scarier than any chupacabra I've ever seen on a TV show. And, get them treated and they look a lot better. But you do get things that happen with the births. We had a female coyote mix brought in that supposedly the daddy of her litter was a coyote, and they were the meanest things that we had ever run into. I got tore up by one of them, but the head was weird. I mean, the head was just really, the jaw was longer, and they were just, besides being real ugly, they were really mean. And, we couldn't keep them, of course. We had to euthanize them because there was no way we could send them out as pets, but that's just, and as you've pointed out, the chupacabra story has changed so much. And I do think, what we have in America, and maybe in Mexico is a dog. That's the chupacabra, and that's just the name that covers it all.
Yeah, that's a good point. I had, a few years ago, I was called out to the property owned by a breeder of Peruvia Inca orchids, which is a hairless species of dogs, and she had me looking at her animals. They do have bizarre teeth. They have a condition called scissor mouth, as you know, so it's like their teeth look really weird. Some of them have a little mohawk or fringe on the back, which is chupacabra characteristic. And she also told me that she thought that one of her competitors had actually had some escaped hairless dogs that were running around breeding with interbreeding with coyotes. So I mean, you could have all kinds of things going on with canids. They're very adaptable animals. But you're right. Your other point, when animals are very sickly like that, they do look really strange, and they also behave very aggressively oftentimes when they're not feeling well. So, unlike coyotes, which are typically not diurnal, a lot of people have sighted these blue dogs during the day. And unlike coyotes, which are typically skittish around humans, these animals seem to be very fearless and brazen around humans and show a lot of attitude. So
Well, I agree with you on that. Kurt, I don't know if Kurt's read much up on chupacabras or watched anything.
Yeah, the thing that comes to my mind with the chupacabra is that one it's the famous YouTube video that, you know, somebody's driving, there's a chupacabra running ahead of the car. You know, it's that famous one. But I was thinking of that when you guys were talking about that. That to me, I find interesting, and I have seen some pictures of the dog that I had with the mange thing going on in back, and I find that I can see a lot of interbreeding going on. I mean, hell, if wolves can interbreed with dogs, and people do love a wolf hybrid, you know, and you're willing to get enough insurance so it doesn't kill your neighbor's cat or something like that. I mean, to be honest, I can see coyotes definitely breeding with other dogs or other kind of creatures, and you know, and it's just I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to picture it, but it can be done.
Well, I mean, even I've got a powder puff Chinese crested, and the hairless version of the breed is usually the one that you always see winning the ugliest dog contest, with the teeth that come out like this and a patch of hair here and there and whatever. And the variety comes out in so many ways. Like the kind I've got's covered in hair. But the ones that are hairless, they've got teeth defects, and that's actually normal for the breed. You know, and they just look weird. Scrappers looks like a chupacabra half the time in the mornings anyways, but
yeah, genetics can be really weird, you know. Genetics can play strange games, and you know, you can have veritable quote-unquote monsters if people don't know what they're looking at exactly.
well, kind of like that raccoon, the body was found
Mm-hmm.
loaded years ago.
Montauk monster.
Right. Which ones do you, I mean, out of everything that you could ever wish to actually finally get proof of, I'm guessing Thunderbird would be it for you?
Well, any of them would be amazing, but
right, but
the most important would probably be, you know, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, any of the hominids, because you're talking about, you know, and this is a topic of heated discussion within Bigfoot circles, but is it more ape-like, is it more human-like?
right.
Well, it walks upright very much like us. There's no indication it uses tools or fire, but it may have a rudimentary language. It's probably very intelligent if it's been able to avoid us all these years. So we could be looking to at our closest animal relative. So if the discovery of something like that would literally rock the foundations of society and religion and a lot of other things.
Hold on a minute. Now, I know probably when I was 6, 8 years old, that's when I started reading about Bigfoot, Billy Apes, you know, all the old stories. I was posting some old pictures of Thunderbirds that were supposedly killed when settlers come into the area. I think I actually still have those library books. But there were so many, I don't know, there's just so many variations, and now, especially with the internet, I think we're able to kind of close ranks, get the different varieties organized, so to speak. And I know probably 10 years ago, a lot of people were arguing about certain aspects. And I haven't been as much into it as I used to be, but are there still those groups that are still arguing over just some of the little bits? And
oh yeah, well, absolutely. You know, it's when you have people that are really driven and very passionate about a subject and very opinionated, you're always going to have that, and that's always been a part of cryptozoology. There's been a kind of a small circle of researchers through the years, we've always worked together, but we haven't always got along and seen eye to eye. But you know, from my perspective, you have to be as objective as you can. It's not always easy, but I I like the diversity of different opinions and different ideas and perspectives that are brought into the field, because you're really dealing with, the whole thing is you really are dealing with wild speculation.
Right.
I mean, without physical evidence, all you can really do is, look for whatever evidence you can find, which is usually like circumstantial eyewitness reports, legends, whatever, maybe blurry photographs, and just try to, consider the work the problem. So, but the frustrating thing for me at this, I'll just say this quickly, is I think a lot of time and effort is really being wasted on photographic evidence at this point, or trying to get photographic evidence, because photographic evidence, particularly in 2015, will never be accepted as valid by anybody. It's too easy to Photoshop or fake anything with a photograph. So from a scientific point of view, you really have to have bones, tissue, blood, something that you can actually put under a microscope or put on an examination table and say conclusively, this exists because this is its body part.
Well, one of the platforms that I used when I did my paper is the footprints, the casts with the dermal ridges. And Bell, I can't remember his first name, but they call it the Bell graft. That if there's a certain amount, the sizes go from like little kid size to say adult, old, whatever size creatures, that you do have a species and you have a group of species. Like I said, I can't quote it exactly. It's been several years since I've done it, but I do remember it being called that. And I know one of the guys had worked with, I think it was the New York Police Department, and he was a fingerprint expert, and he agreed with that.
Yeah, well, I mean, you bring up the Bigfoot casts. I mean, that is the most compelling physical evidence for Bigfoot, because not only do you have dermal ridges on some tracks, but you also have a consistent physiology, morphology of the design of the foot. You know, I mean, there are people out there that are faking tracks and have these cut-out footprints, and those are always very stagnant and easy to identify. But then you have fluid trackways where these things have walked, where each step is different because it was stepping at a different angle on an object, or going uphill or whatever. And so you may not have a full print, you have a half print. You might have the toes flexing in a different position. So all of this stuff has been examined by physical anthropologists like Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Grover Krantz, and other people much smarter than I am that know that this is a biological thing, that this is not somebody faking it. And besides, a lot of those trackways that have been found totally randomly in some remote area. Now, who's going to go out and lay down 500 fake footprints if you have no possibility that anyone is going to stumble into that area, So, I mean, if it's found by the side of the road, that's one thing, but in a remote mountainous area, someone finds it, and it's pretty remarkable.
Hey, what's the scariest thing you've ever run into? I mean, because you put yourself out there, and I know you've been asked this a million times, but I'm like into this conversation, listening. I'm like, what is the most freakiest thing you've ever come across? Because you are putting yourself into some, whether it's, if you're at a national park or you're off the national park on private property, you're in some dangerous areas. What's the freakiest thing that you've ever come across?
Wow. Oh, man, I wish I had something funny to say, because this would be a good time to string you guys along. But I honestly, I have been, I've never seen a cryptid with my own eyes, but I'm convinced that I've heard one, and it was a Bigfoot creature. Mm-hmm. It was a large primate, a huge primate, and it was kind of grunting at me or growling at me, and this was in the woods of North Texas. We found other evidence. We didn't see this thing because it was in a heavy brush and we couldn't get to it. To our credit, we did try to flush it out and do different things, so we didn't just run away, in fear. But we did find the next day, when we were able to get into that area, we found footprints and we found mutilated animal carcasses and things, and all of that together to me was the most convincing thing. It was, when we heard this thing growling at us and we could tell how big it was and how loud it was, only one of us had a gun, and he was kind of off to one side, and I stepped off to the side with my camera, and I thought he was going to try to flush it out, and I thought, well, this might be the end. but at least I'll get this thing on videotape as it's coming towards me, flushes it out. And I don't know if it was fortunate or unfortunate that that didn't happen. I didn't get it on videotape. But I have recordings of the sounds, the vocalizations. They're pretty creepy.
I know there's an area probably about 10, 15 miles away from me that it's supposed to be haunted. It's supposed to have Bigfoot just everything in the world, UFO sightings in this area. And I had gone over there years before with the paranormal team, and we went back in the woods looking for a witch's cemetery. And they were doing everything they could with that, and then one of them come up with the bright idea of tree knocking. And I've lived here in this area for 32 years. I've never heard of one Bigfoot sighting in this area whatsoever. And believe, I think the last thing in this area, and he's called Momo in Missouri, was...
Yep, Missouri Monster. Momo.
Yeah. And it was a town probably 15 miles north of me, and it was in the 60s, and it supposedly was a family. It's a gentleman took his grandson out there, and he just wanted him to see it one time. It was down some dirt road where there used to be some logging going on, and he told this kid that this family lived here. He was not to tell anybody, and, you know, it was a special treat, and it was something maybe for him to pass on to his own grandkids one of these days. Haven't been able to get that verified, but we're out on this investigation, and these guys are from St. Louis, and I was the only girl out there with them, and you know, they start the tree knocking, and I'm standing there just kind of looking around, and they're kind of hesitant looking, and they're like, you need to back up a little bit, and I'm like, seriously, the only thing out here is raccoons and maybe a bobcat, you know, because there was something a little bit bigger than a raccoon, but yeah, it wasn't a Bigfoot. I've been in the woods. I've gone hunting. I would know if somebody or something larger than me was out there checking us out, and I don't think he would have ran through us, you know, just to make a point that, you know, we needed to not be knocking on the trees.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, definitely sightings in that area. I've heard maybe 2 or 3 single wood knocks in the 15 or 20 years that I've been doing field research for Bigfoot. So I've heard it a couple of times, but it's not something that, you know, I've encountered frequently. But, you know, we couldn't identify what it was, but, you know, there's always the chance that a tree fell down and hit another tree. You know, I guess you can't, if you don't see it happen.
Right.
Do you think, Ken, a lot of these shows that are out these days, and I'm not going to name any show or anything like this, but,
No,
you know.
Do it.
I'm not going to call. I'm not going to call out anybody.
Do it, Kurt.
But
No,
I have a paranormal show that
Don't
we've
be
given up
chicken.
calling out people. But do you think it's doing more damage to what you're doing than me? Let's say going on Destination America and hearing about the Yahoo Screamer, and I'm going, the Yahoo Screamer. And I'm not being skeptical. I'm just, for someone who's actually out there down in Texas, really putting in the effort, really, you know, traveling places, and just saying, listen, I've only barely heard this, and this. I put in X amount of hours, and there's a bunch of TV shows on now that are doing kind of damage to what, you know, you're trying to further the idea or further the, you know, solidify it, while these TV shows are doing the opposite.
But Mountain Monsters at least does say for entertainment purposes only.
Oh, I didn't see that. I wasn't talking about that. I was just saying in general. I mean, I've seen these shows now. You know, you flip to any channel, you got a show on cryptids or a Bigfoot or ghosts or anything. I mean, we talk to all people, too, that have TV for, you know, that we ask the same thing. It's like, dude, what is it? I mean, how does it make you feel?
Well, you know,
without naming names.
You know, I don't take it personally, and I've worked in television. I understand that sometimes you're working with producers that are more about wanting to entertain than inform. So you try.
I understand.
You try to work those things out when you can, but you know, I leave it up to. I guess I have faith that the viewers at home will hopefully use critical thinking when they're watching a TV show and decide for themselves whether something is strictly for entertainment purposes only, or whether there's some scientific merit there, and they're actually getting some information and knowledge that pertain, and whether it's building a case for reality. Now, I told you guys just a minute ago that I've been doing field research actively for 15 or 20 years, and I've only heard a Bigfoot maybe once. So if there's a team going out in the woods and they're encountering a cryptid every week, and right on its tail, then you have to look at that. Then you have to look at that as a mathematical equation. Is it mathematically probable that any researcher is going to be able to track? I'm not trying to be smug, but you know what I'm saying.
No,
I mean,
dude, it's just, I totally agree with you because
now,
I mean, I talk to people in the paranormal field that say the same thing. It's just like, it's TV. I mean, it's all about, bottom line, it's the dollars. Without the ratings, you're nowhere.
Exactly.
But at the same time, do you get to the point where, like, I'm glad I'm tied into this production company and not that production company? Just due to the fact, when this is all said and done, and people really come to read my books, and you do have a lot of books out that I want to plug too, that, you want to be credible. Because we've talked to so many people in the paranormal field, I'm sitting there going like this on the show, talking to these people, and they're telling us these stories, and once off camera, oh my God, all hell breaks loose, what they say. I'm like, oh, Jesus. It's great, but I mean, out of fairness to you, because, dude, you're doing a lot, I mean, honestly, you put in a lot of years. You've written enough books. I was learning the books, and Lynette's trying to hit me up to get on air, and I'm trying to scroll through, like, your different books. No, I'm not blaming her, actually. But I was looking at your books and what ideas you had. So I did a little – so I came in not totally cold. I just like to know, but I just – again, it goes down to – I don't know, man. I just – because you run into some solid people that have been on TV, but they're looked at so differently just because they're on TV. When they see you on TV, they expect that's how you are in the field off of TV. And that's where I'm getting at with that.
No, you made all the points. I mean, I try to, as an ambassador for the field of cryptozoology, I try to do my very best to represent the field as a credible endeavor. We are looking at real evidence. I have the greatest respect for my heroes, the cryptozoologists that came before me. Many of them have passed away through the years, and they were my heroes. And they were scientists and people that looked at things critically. Now, I can understand why people would say or think, if they don't have enough information, that what we do in this field is ridiculous, that there's no way something like Bigfoot could exist. Come on. Mm-hmm. But you can't, the thing is, from a truly scientific perspective, you can't rule out anything completely, 100%. True. It is possible. True. New species are still being discovered. True. Vast areas of our planet are still remote wilderness areas that we don't know. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It is possible, at least, that some of these things do exist, and science demands that you investigate the evidence and see if it's true or not, but not that you just kind of blow it off without even looking into it. I don't think that's scientific.
Where were you, dude, when I was failing anthropology? I would have been cheating off you like you would not believe. I always had a method, too. Hat in front of me, person right here who was smart. I could not. Anthropology just blew my brains just to get to know, like, Australopithecus and all these. I'm going, I can't remember this stuff. I'm not made for this. But, but dude, I mean, what you're saying is it's coming up as very legitimate. And I find that unbelievable and very honest is what I'm trying to tell you. And I just think that television ruins a lot of things about certain subjects in the world, because not everybody is thinking as critically as you and I really would like people to think. One, let's say I catch you on a show. Okay, let's say I catch you on a show by chance. I'll be into it, but I'll critically think that, listen, this is television. Money needs to be made. Production companies need to be paid. Editors, you don't know where you're going to end up on the editor's floor, so you don't know how your personality is going to come out. It might be totally opposite than who you really are, but people, I think, in this country, and I'm saying in this country, need to start to learn to think critically, not skeptically, because I'm not coming off as a skeptic with this. I'm coming off very interested in this, actually, because this stuff I did not know about. You know, I look at it as learning. And if more people came about as learning about it, they might not go with a shotgun trying to spotlight a Bigfoot, you know, in the woods behind my apartment complex. You know, that's just the way I look at it. You know, so I apologize. I go ranting sometimes.
No, it's a good rant. Good rant.
Yeah, but you're solid, dude. And I agree with. I like the way you go about it. You know.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you.
I've got a question. I know with paranormal, when someone presents evidence picture-wise and it's orbs, it's kind of like something like, you know, somebody needed a dust or something like that. Is there evidence that you, is a certain type of evidence that you get sent or come across that you just disclaim? And
yeah, it's called the glob squatch.
all right.
People send me pictures of shadows in the woods that you can't see what they are. They've got them circled in red and say, look, there's 3 Sasquatches here peeking out. There's a juvenile here and a face here, and you look at it and it's pareidolia. People are making up faces of shadows and darkness, and
it's all matrixing. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the people that are sending me that stuff, I mean, I don't want to tear them down because they're nice people and they're sincere and they're trying, but they, you know, they understand how highly subjective those types of images are, that you can't use, they're not admissible as evidence.
And if it was a paranormal person that had that, they'd have, this is a demon,
they do that.
So's grandmother, and
they do that.
Dog that come from General Sherman.
Yeah, they do that. They get kicked out of They get kicked out of every Facebook group, and then they end up in the crypto group doing the same thing, going, well, I guess if there wasn't a shadow figure in this group, let's make it Bigfoot. You know, let's circle everything, and I tell people, if you're gonna send me anything, never circle it. Let me try to figure it out myself. You know, I mean, it's just the way I look at it. I don't know, dude.
No, that's fair, but you know, I get that a lot, and I'm skeptical of people that have had too many experiences, and I think I hurt a guy's feelings today because he kept saying, oh, I've got all these things that I'm going to show you that you know, you won't believe all the things that I've seen and experienced, and I'm like, you know, that's like saying you win the lottery every week, you know, I mean, now, granted, I gave him an opportunity because, again, I'm objective, so I'm like, okay, well, do you have like special gifts or special, you know, perceptions and insights that, you know, that the rest of us aren't privy to? Or do you think that you live next to some portal or things are, you know, I mean, build your case if that's what you're telling me. I'm not going to completely rule it out. But he got very offended, the fact, you know, my inference that I'm not comfortable with that when people say they've had, you know, abducted by aliens and I've seen Bigfoot. Oh, and my house was haunted. You know, it's just, it doesn't make sense that someone would have experienced that much, you know, unexplained phenomenon. But maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know. I think if somebody actually experienced all that, they would probably be on so many psych meds that no one would believe them, and they probably wouldn't be able to talk half the time.
Or they need to go out and make friends outside the world of Facebook. You know, I think Facebook ruins people's lives at times. Could be good, and other times you're just going, I love when people get in arguments on Facebook because it's just like drama. And I don't want any part of it. You just watch it and you're like, oh. And these paranormal groups and these other groups and conspiracy groups are one of them. And they go at it. It's so funny. But like you said, you really can't personally slam someone. But at the same time, you got to be like, you got to kind of critique it in a way and say, listen, dude, like you said, if you got all this stuff going on at once, you know, I kind of find it hard to believe. And, I mean, as much as if I don't mean to make you mad, I'm not here to piss you off, but, well, maybe I am here to piss you off at that point because you're already annoying me to a point where I don't want to be bothered with it. But no, in general, though, I mean, like you said, you've seen 3 to 4 to 5 different things in 12 to 20 years, and all of a sudden you're getting all these people that are catching these things like they're catfish. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like fish in a bucket. Man, you're a good guy, dude. Ken, you're a good guy. You're that nice to people. I give you a lot of credit.
Thanks, Karen. Well, my mama raised me right. You gotta respect other people's opinions and try not to hurt their feelings if you can avoid it.
Well, Kurt might turn into a believer one of these days.
No, actually, I'm not a disbeliever. I'm not a disbeliever. That's the whole thing. I'm not skeptical on these cryptids. I find I just don't read enough about them. I don't know, and I admit I don't know enough about them. I just like to learn more about them. You know what I'm talking about? Just in case one day I go in the woods and there are two of them going out and having sex, I know what I'm running into. But that'll never be believed, of course. No matter who I tell. So I wouldn't even say a word about that. That'd be like, I didn't see anything. But no, I'm just kidding around. But no, I'm not a skeptic when it comes to cryptids. I just don't honestly know enough about them. That's how I look at it.
Well, I appreciate you coming in here with an open mind, Kurt, and hopefully we've given you a little bit of information to go with. There is a ton of evidence that people aren't exposed to. And again, the points I always make with people are the world is still vast and unexplored. Trust me, I've traveled all over it. New species are discovered every year, a lot of them, and a few big ones. They're not all tiny, and nothing is impossible. So it is possible that there are things out there that we are going to discover at some point that are going to be pretty groundbreaking.
Well, I mean, there's new apes getting discovered, and who's to say there's not like a subhuman species of people that's like, oh man, they're here again, and they just move farther back into the jungles.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we got to get ready to wrap it up. But Ken, before that, we want to talk about your books. All right, that's key to me. You have a good amount of books out there. I really was almost getting into more of them, but to the young lady sitting beside you, as I see on the screen, I just couldn't get past them first because I wanted to read a little, just tidbits, just have some tidbits. What books do you have out there, and where can they be found?
Well, I appreciate it, guys, and thanks again for having me on. This was a lot of fun. My first book is called Big Bird, Modern Sightings of Flying Monsters. It addresses the Thunderbird phenomenon. You can find that on Amazon or any online book retailer. Same with Monsters of Texas, which I co-authored with my colleague Nick Redfern, and that's a regional book about the state of Texas and all of the cryptid creatures we have here in this great state. And my most recent book was from 2013. It's called Encounters with Flying Humanoids, Mothman, Man-Birds, Gargoyles, and Other Winged Beasts. And there you're going to find Mothman, Jersey Devil, and a host of weird zoo-form creatures that are, pretty fascinating. And I'm working on a new book. It'll be out next year. It's called A Menagerie of Mysterious Beasts, and it's loaded with all kinds of heretofore unpublished eyewitness accounts of Bigfoot-like creatures, thunderbirds, lake monsters, black panthers, werewolves, giant spiders, giant frogs, and all kinds of crazy things that I've investigated over the years.
Dude, that is cool. Hey, do you have anything coming up people can catch you on TV? Anything, or are you kind of taking some time off from that right now?
Well, nothing really new, but if anyone wants to catch Missing in Alaska, there's going to be a mini marathon on this Sunday morning on the H2 network, History 2. There's going to be a few episodes of Missing in Alaska showing, and they'll be showing them periodically, I imagine, on the H2 in the weeks and months to come.
All right.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate you coming on the show. I was
awesome.
Excited to get you on here. And
like
I said, Dallas is
awesome.
Going to hate that he missed it.
I'd love to. I wanted to see Dallas on with all you three talking. I was just excited for it, but I was pulled in last minute to produce and stuff like that. So, dude, great stuff, Ted. Great stuff, man.
We did a great job, Kurt. Good questions and rants, and Lynette.
Oh, I'm sorry for the rants, dude. I apologize.
No. It was good. And Lynette is very knowledgeable, and it was a lot of fun. And I appreciate everyone that listened in. Hopefully, we can do it again real soon.
Okay, great.